Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing just fine. How are you? Oh, those are. I was looking for those the other day.
It's our favorite candy, Levi.
Robin eggs. Or although raven eggs would be cool.
The bunnies are coming. Okay. Seriously, the bunnies are coming to a festival near you, but that's another story for another day. Today, our next installment of The Price of Poe.
Yes. We got a good one for the listeners today.
Yes, we have a
very good one.
And we also have a special guest. We figured out how to do the things. So, I guess before we get into all that, I guess we should get this party started, huh?
Let's do it.
All right, here we go. The sky, it's dark, and the wind is blowing. Come inside. Sit down with a cup of tea while we tell you a little story. A story that lies beyond the oblong box. With your hosts, Levi Leland and Virginia Poe. It's very cold here. Don't let the sunshine fool you.
Yeah, it's quite cold in my neck of the woods as well. We had a beautiful day yesterday, but of course,
it was so nice.
Nothing lasts forever.
No, but Tuesday, the bunnies arrive.
The bunnies arrive.
Mm-hmm. So, I just want to give a quick shout out to my peeps at Ghouls and Grinds in Hanover, Pennsylvania. I would like to thank you very much for my nice cup of almond tea this morning that I have. It's very, very delicious.
It's good fuel for this episode. We're going to be talking about Ligeia.
Yes, we are. And I guess so that we can get this conversation rolling, because we've got a lot of info to share.
Yes. We can introduce our guest.
Yes.
Mel Grosvenor. She's an Ohio-based Poe enthusiast and Price enthusiast. Very knowledgeable. She's the creator and founder of the Ohio Poe Fans Facebook group. She leads walks of various cemeteries and creates some really great discussions about Poe and Price. So I can't think of a better person to join us on this episode for these segments. And she has a great anecdote to share with us, and I'm not going to spoil it. So let's just bring her in.
Spoilers. And I'm bringing her in right now.
Let her speak for herself.
All right, and I have a black cat with me.
Yay.
So apropos, this is Catwoman.
Hi,
yes,
Catwoman.
I'm thrilled to be a part of this. I enjoy watching your podcast, and this is kind of fun for me. But yes, I do have an interesting story. I have actually met one of the actors who was in The Tomb of Ligeia. I wish I could say it was Mr. Price, but it was not. It was his co-star, Elizabeth Shepard, who was both Lady Rowena and Ligeia in the film.
Yes.
So she had a dual role. And I can't say I met her in person. It was through a Zoom chat. I am friends with Vincent Price's daughter, Victoria. And she had a session where we could meet her and talk to her. And so everyone had questions about, well, what was Mr. Price like? And of course, she had the same things that many people say about him. He was charming and gracious and very easy to work with, and not a creepy guy at all. You know, he portrayed that so well, but he was actually very, very charming. But after everyone had asked all those questions, of course, my questions were, what were the cats like? And she said there were 3 cats who played the role of the black cat in the film. And unfortunately, during one of the filming scenes, one of the cats ran off and they never found it. I have no idea what happened. I hope this poor cat found a home, but it was just like, nope, I'm out of here. And that was that. And one of my questions was, with that film, I always thought it was kind of odd that it just looked like these cats are flying in and out of shots, like they're being thrown. And the truth be told, they were being thrown onto soft surfaces. So they weren't, there's no animal cruelty here. But when it looks like there's a cat flying through the air, it really is a cat flying through the air. Oh my goodness. And I rewatched the film. I rewatched the film yesterday, and I always laugh, especially at the dream sequence where the cat has the sound of a mountain lion. And and there's a scene where there's a silhouette and the cat's just kind of going across the screen, and it just looks like this weird little silhouette. It just it always made me laugh. But anyway, those were some of the things that she had to share.
It's crazy how times have changed, I guess, with film, with anything. But I don't know how easily they would get away with that today in filming.
Oh, I know. Well, she was also. I can tell you. Oh, go ahead.
I can tell you. No, it wouldn't happen. It wouldn't happen.
There's so much stricter rules around
rules now that have to be followed.
Well, she was also in the Omen 2 film, and was talking about one of the scenes where they had a raven. Might as well tie a raven into this as well.
Yeah, of course.
And the raven's attacking someone, and they actually had little bits of meat on the actors, they had like a wig with meat in it for this raven, so that it would be encouraged to attack.
And attack at the. That's
crazy.
They generally have to do things, especially like if they're supposed to be doing. They're trained to, do their certain commands, and a lot of it is treat driven.
For animals, of course.
Not as humans. Well, I mean, some people are motivated by food, but tell me there's chocolate cake or something involved with chocolate, and I'm usually like, yes, how can I help you?
Yeah.
But so I guess I'm no different from a raven, and I also do like shiny things like most crows. So I guess I'm saying
we embody all of those fun Poe-esque animals. One thing that kind of came to my mind when Mel was sharing her bit, was how Price isn't like the creepy kind of weird guy that he portrays in the films. That kind of calls to mind Poe, because I think a lot of people would assume Poe is this weird, creepy guy because of this body of works that he produced, but he wasn't. From the anecdotes we have of him, he was a very normal, eloquently spoken, intelligent, social individual, funny characterist,
very charming.
Just very charming. Had a lot of charm to him, and so I guess Price was very much similar to that. You can there's a total separation of the art from the artist. Sometimes people like to associate the things, those two things together, thinking, well, if they're producing this type of work, then it must reflect them as an individual. Well, not always, that's not always the case. And so Poe, speaking of Poe's works and this story, we talked a little bit about the movie, and I think we'll delve a little bit more into it as we go. But the story Ligeia was published in 1838 in the American Museum magazine. And pretty much, we can delve into the differences between the story and the film, but it's pretty much a very Poe-esque tale. There's common themes in it that are throughout a lot of Poe's stories, we have like, this unnamed narrator. We have a beautiful female character named Ligeia, and she's ill. Big surprise. And
not again.
Yeah, it's just like, it's almost like I could be describing any Poe tale at this point right now.
Man, these narrators just cannot get a break.
Yeah, they can't get a break and they can't get a name.
No. They're forever nameless.
Yeah. We have this recurring theme of an unreliable, unnamed narrator. And he's already unreliable because in the beginning he's talking about his opium dreams. And so we're not quite sure exactly if this story then proceeds into this hallucination from this narrator, or if these are real events that are occurring. We don't really know. He's unreliable. And I think Poe does that so frequently throughout his works just to make his reader question everything, and that's kind of Poe's tactic in writing. One thing about this story that's interesting is that it's the first appearance of a poem, a very popular Poe poem as well, the Conqueror Worm.
Near and dear to you.
Near to me, very near to me. In fact, it's permanently, embedded into my skin. And I love this poem. This is one of my favorites. I think it's just amazing. And this was a very early version of the poem. Poe made some revisions to it in later publications of it. Minor things. Overall, the poem is very much the same, but he chose a couple different wordings here and there throughout the poem in subsequent publications of it and edits. And the story, too, was edited quite a bit throughout Poe's lifetime. And so Ligeia writes this poem. She's very intelligent. She's kind of like this perfect woman for this narrator. And of course, as I said, she's ill. She dies. And so the narrator marries another woman, Lady Rowena. And that's also in the movie. We have Lady Rowena. But then she becomes ill and she dies. And there's a goblet of wine where, the narrator sees 2 drops of this ruby colored fluid that goes into the goblet before he's, forcing Lady Rowena to drink this goblet. And this could be some kind of allusion to tuberculosis. Some people think, her cheeks are very rosy, which is another actual symptom of tuberculosis, the rosy cheeks. And so after Lady Rowena dies, she's shrouded. The narrator spends the night with her. And at some point, her body becomes reanimated and she stands and walks to the middle of the room. And as the shrouds unwrap from her face, she is reincarnated as Ligeia. And so we have a couple recurrences of this in Poe's tales of a woman resurrected and as someone else. And I think, Poe had in his lifetime so many losses of women. We almost have to wonder, did he kind of have this longing or this kind of idea that, that these women could be brought back, that these women can be in his life, That's my cue.
That was our 15-minute cue.
That's our 15-minute cue.
Even though it's a half hour.
Yeah. But it's interesting. It's an interesting story, and I think a lot of people can find recurring themes throughout, all of Poe's tales that are also in this tale. Right. And what do you guys think? I mean, as far as like the movie and the story, like what are some similarities? What are some differences? I mean, let me put on my
glasses back on so I can actually see the thing in front of me. Called my notes. So Ligeia was, of course, directed by the wonderful Roger Corman in 1964. This was probably what Corman said was his most ambitious of the Poe movies. It was shot in 25 days instead of the usual 15.
It's amazing.
And here's why. Number one, they shot this on location in England.
That's cool.
Tea time everyone has to have tea time. And so Corman said that the shooting took longer because of tea breaks. So
interesting.
Interesting. Well, excuse me while I have a sip up. I can't say I blame them for wanting tea time, especially if there's little cucumber sandwiches involved, scones of some sort, hopefully, because it's not tea without scones and sandwiches. Anyway, this was actually the 8th film that he did in his series. It was the 2nd that he made in England, where you see the exterior of the castle in the story that they refer to as the Abbey. That's actually a real place. That is Castle Acre Priory, and that is actually in Norfolk. So the exterior, mostly what you see is actually the castle. It still stands as of, I think, like right before the pandemic. It was even still open for tours.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I should have checked that, but before the pandemic, they were still definitely open for tours. There are several pieces that you see that are not actually part of it. Like the big tower that we see, that was actually built specifically for the movie. It does not exist outside of the movie. A lot of the greenery and the tombstones that we see, again, not part of the actual castle. Those were, of course, added for the movie. When we also see the big shots of Stonehenge, not necessarily the ones where they're walking through Stonehenge, but the exterior shots that you see, it's actually Stonehenge. It's credited as Stonehenge. And I tried to see if there were other places that discredited the fact that they were actually filming there, but back in the 60s, you could still walk into Stonehenge. Well, it's not like now where you can only get so close before you have to, stop.
Yeah.
You shall not pass.
None shall pass.
Yeah, you shall not pass. So also some crazy things is in Spain, it never got a theatrical release. I have questions about Spain and why they don't like Poe movies. At least back in the 60s. Thank you.
We'll have to get someone from Spain on here to give us some insight. We got someone from Ohio, but Spain, that might be more difficult.
I've been trying to research this, and I guess it has something to do with like censorship laws and whatnot.
That's what I would assume.
Film standards back at like even about 25 years ago, like what you could and couldn't do in film was vastly different.
Right. I think about the last decade or so, even maybe a little bit more. I mean, the things that are now in films and even TV shows, and you're like, oh my God, like how did they get away with this? It's crazy how quickly things can change over a short amount of time.
Yeah. So it didn't get a theatrical release when it first came out, but it did get a TV release 10 years later in 1974. Better late than never.
Yeah.
They had 2 alternative titles that they originally were going to call the movie, though they stuck with Tomb of Ligeia for every release that I could find anyway.
Okay.
But the first title was The House at the End of the World, and then The Tomb of the Cat. So those were the 2 alternate titles.
That's different.
Yeah. And one of the things that is in the movie that I don't remember being in the story, but at one point they are wanting to sell the house because Lady Rowena and you know, her new husband, they want to, you know, start a new life in a new home that's theirs. But until they get the castle, the abbey sold, they're going to stay there for a few days. And it comes to light that everything is in the Lady Ligeia's name. So he cannot actually sell this abbey. And it all boils down to death certificates. So in this movie, it takes place in the early 1800s, so prior to 1830. And so they're talking about death certificates. And technically, because this story does take place in the movie in Britain, they didn't have death certificates until like 1837, 1838, so very late 1830s. So prior to that, you didn't have to issue a death certificate for anything. Usually it was like done through a parish or something like that. If they can, again, it goes back to like the lack of record keeping and why we have a hard time finding things about ancestors and things like that. And, you know, so I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
So I'm like, historically, that's not right, but whatever. I digress.
Some artistic license there, you know.
Yeah.
For the convenience of the,
and I would just like to talk about these opening credits. Holy wow. I tried so hard to find out who the artist was that did the artwork, because it's also what we see in the vault, in the basement. When she, you know, when they're going through and all the statues and everything. I mean, they look like statues, but I know that they are like backdrop type paintings.
Yeah.
But, oh man.
Some great imagery.
But so good. Yeah. And back to that dream sequence you were talking about. So interesting fun fact about that dream sequence. So usually and I have many dreams like this where everything is moving so slow. It's all slow motion. And so a lot of people tend to think that when they film stuff like that, and actually a lot of people do use this where they slow the film down, everything's moving in normal speed, but you're just slowing it down, right? Actually, Corman had them do everything in very slow motion. So it gives it kind of this uncanny valley feel, you know?
Right.
It's like, it's very disorienting. And I forgot how disorienting that dream sequence is until I watched it again. And I'm like, yeah, this hits a nerve. I don't like this dream. Wake up. Like, please wake up. Lady Rowena, wake up. So, yeah. So I thought that was pretty interesting that he actually had them do everything in very slow motion.
Yeah.
So that it gave it just that added layer of like unease.
Right. It certainly attests to the brilliance of Corman and the actors and, you know, to be able to, you know, invoke those kinds of emotions and you know, unsettling feelings inside of you while you're watching this film. Like that's, you know, same thing Poe tried to do in his tales, which he did, you know, it's little things like that don't seem like a lot, but it's like, wow, something as simple as just, you know, kind of moving is a little bit slower than normal can just really set that uneasiness within you, you know, the audience, the reader, the whatever, you know, it's really cool. And that's why these films certainly have stood the test of time, I think, you know, for Poe fans and on their own, you know?
Right.
Yeah, I know.
I wish they had director's cuts.
Oh, I know. That'd be awesome. I know. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
The guest is being rude. I'm checked out. That's it. It's over.
No, we want you to talk. That's why you're here.
That's why you're here, to talk.
Okay. So no, I was just gonna say a lot of these Corman Poe films, they stray so far from Poe's stories sometimes, but I actually went through a period where I kind of didn't like them. I hate to say that because I've always loved Vincent Price, but I was such a Poe fan. I was like, oh, these are so far from what he wrote. Oh my gosh, you know.
Yeah.
But I have seen interviews with both Poe and Price. Not Poe. Interview with Poe. Oh my gosh, I would love to have that.
Tell me your secret.
Interview with Corman. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, my exclusive interview with Poe. You'll have to pay a price for that one.
Yeah. It's a paid appearance, on a podcast.
But anyway, they had both talked about how, you know, Poe's stories were very short, and the films had to have more substance. You know, you're trying to take something that you can read in a short amount of time and put it into a full film. So they had to add a lot to it, but they kept the spirit of the tales.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think that dream sequence and the scenery, the artwork, you know, all of that conveys Poe to me. Yes. You know, and then after I kind of saw that and heard them explain it that way, I'm like, okay, I can appreciate these again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But,
sure. And they really did, like, and I agree, like, they definitely stray far from the written material. But as we said in the last episode, when we were discussing differences, and, you know, sometimes they have to embellish on things or change things for the dramatis. Mm-hmm. So, you know, and you know, it's unfortunate, but you know, and some things actually don't translate very well from page onto screen.
Right. That's why there are always so many differences between the book and the movie. You know, people always go back and forth. Oh, the book's better than the movie. Well, no, I like the movie better. It's like, well, yeah, they're two different outlets for telling the same story. They're, you know what I mean? So it's subjective in a way, you know?
Right. Exactly. So yeah. So I guess that is
we covered it. That's Ligeia.
We did. That's Ligeia, everybody.
Do we want to give any plugs, Mel, while you're on here?
I was thinking about that.
Where can people find you? Where can people see your offerings and your wisdom? And
so I head up the Ohio Poe Fans Facebook group, which you can find that on Facebook. Just look for Ohio Poe Fans, and people are welcome from all over. We don't just exclusively have Ohioans. I was trying to seek out other Poe geeks like myself in my own neck of the woods, but we now have people from all over the world, actually, not even just in the States. Something exciting I do want to plug. We do have a date now, and as soon as I can get some promotional stuff out there, Victoria Price is going to come to my little humble state of Ohio on Friday, the 13th of October. We're going to do a film double feature. We're going to show House of Wax. In the middle of that, she's going to do a great talk about her father. I've seen her do this talk a few times, and do a Q&A, and then she's going to stick around. We're going to do The Raven after that. And then the following day, we will be co-hosting a walk in Woodland Cemetery in Dayton, Ohio. The film fest will be at Murphy Theater, and there will be information on Ohio Poe Fans. So you heard it here first. Super excited about that. That's going to be a good time. So hopefully, maybe through the podcast, get some new members. Maybe some people might find themselves in Ohio around October 13th. Let's hope.
I have paid time off that I need to use. Just saying. You've been warned, Mel.
But yeah, Victoria is absolutely wonderful. She's a wealth of information, loves to share stories about her dad. And she's kind of funny because she's not a fan of horror. She's a fan of horror fans.
Yes.
She loves the people who love her dad. And she's very generous with sharing her love of her dad with others. And it brings her joy and it brings them joy. And it's just all around wonderful. And so she's delighted to come and do these types of things. So hopefully people can come and meet her.
It is so
cool. Definitely. Well, before we jump off here, again, we'd like to say thank you, Mel, for joining us today.
Thank you so much. Absolutely.
And definitely don't forget April 1st and 2nd in Hunt Valley at the Telltale Steampunk Festival. You'll see me and Levi and Corman and Jeannie from 6 Degrees of Poe. We'll all be there, various workshops and presentations, and there's actually one I really want to see. Thank goodness it's after our filming and not before, because I'd cry because I kind of have to get things set up. Yeah, so it's after, so I'm very excited about that talk. Let's see. And then, oh yeah, if you happen to have nothing to do today, I suggest if you're near Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, please go over to the Creature Feature weekend. It is a fantastic horror festival. They have a lot of good people there. And as a matter of fact, as soon as we're done here, I have to rush off because I have a date. I have a date with Doug Jones.
That's super cool.
We'll have to photo op. It's not a real date. He's a very happily married man.
Wow.
And I love their love, and they are just, yeah, goals. Mm-hmm. But I get to have my picture with him, so
that's all that matters.
I'm gonna go back, work the reg table, and then do my photo and go back to reg.
Nope, kitty interruption.
Oh, kitty cat interruptions. All right. Well, everyone, thank you very much for joining us. Don't forget.
Thanks for having me.
Yes. And check us out on Facebook with Beyond the Oblong Box. You can find us on Instagram. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on our Patreon, Beyond the Oblong Box podcast. And next week, very excited to do our episode next week.
Oh, what's the movie? What's the movie?
The clue is in the name. All right, everyone.
Okay. All right.
Mel, thanks for coming.
I'm getting cryptic here.
Yeah.
Levi, thanks for joining me.
All right.
That's all.
Yeah, Levi, always a pleasure seeing you.
Mel, my good friend.
Yeah.
My kindred spirit.
Uh-huh.
It's been great.
All right. Well, we'll see everyone next week, and have a great week. Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you, guys.
Bye.
You've been listening to Beyond the Oblong Box with your hosts, Levi Leland and Virginia Poe. This program is produced by EG&L Brothers Limited with production assistance by Peter D. Come Rest in This Bosom, arranged and performed by the Ninth Heaven. You can find us online on Facebook at BTOB Podcast, on Instagram at Beyond the Oblong Box, or reach us by email btob1847@gmail.com. If you'd like to help our show grow, consider becoming a patron by visiting patreon.com/Beyond the Oblong Box Podcast. You can also subscribe, rate, or review the show on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any of your preferred podcast platforms.